We had tried
and
this
we
in the
go.
last large cap meeting, but we didn't quite do it right. So we tested it out, and I think we have it down.
Okay, now it should be back to that.
Okay. All right. Good. So you're covering what's new. Is that good,
Uh,
Glenn?
yeah, so I'll cover what's new. On eligible projects, they must cost more than $250,000. And I think Noel mentioned this before. If they're under $250,000, look at the large cap grants. They're probably appropriate there. We have particularly moved the remodel and repair projects that we think are most appropriate under $250,000 over to large cap because that is a faster way to get funding than would be the facility projects. And the application is probably a little easier than the facility project is these days. The project description uh, for facility project should now include conceptual designs and budgets. You're required to submit those and upload them, but we want you now discussing how you made decisions in the conceptual designs that ended up with the project that you need, and all of that will be scored. The scoring we're changing to provide what we hope is clearer guidance. We'll talk about that a little bit more. We're maintaining, however, the 60-point minimum out of 100 to continue to on and be selected for funding. Um, the we're also at the end of the instructions providing you examples. There are 3 examples. They are just that, examples, and we'll talk about them more, but they are designed to provide you with what we think is a good example of low scoring applications and high scoring applications. They will not be cut and paste. They are not your projects, but they're a good example of what an application could and should look like. This is
Okay.
yours, Noel.
Yep, I know. Thank you. Funding targets. So 6.5 million for 27. So that's down a little bit. Normally we do 7.5 as a target per year for facilities, but we lowered it by $1 million because we shifted money over to large cap because we anticipate some projects now fitting in that large cap category. So 6.5 million. We did project out maintaining that level out through 2030. And the reason for that is, well, we need to go 4 years for the legislature requires us to go 4 years. So we have to show facilities that way. And the local match is 20%, which I had shared at the last meeting on large cap. That's also 20%. So everybody understands we're back to the full percentage on the large cap. The other thing I want to mention about projects, the year in which you think it's going to, you put a possible year that it would come to fruition, but we know from facility work in the past that that is a moving target. So consider that you're just putting it in the pool to get it approved to be in the pool. So which year it lands in, we'll work through that in programming to figure that out. And that's where Brian and Paul kick in a lot with their expertise from timing of these projects. So don't just assume that if it's in like 2029 and there's all sorts of other 2029s, we'll be moving projects around. It's not as cut and dried for the facilities just because those types of projects have a life cycle of their own and no two are alike. So that's where we have to really individualize those projects a lot as we are programming them. Just want to also mention, if they're big projects, over 3 million is what we estimate. They're pretty much going to be subject to how much money we have available. We may have to go after discretionary money or bonding money or some other source to help with really big projects. So that 3 million is kind of the sweet spot of where most of our doable projects without having to get discretionary come in. We've had some bigger facility projects that have required us to seek those outside funds. And of course that then affects when they're done. So particularly either the discretionary or bonding, it creates a challenge. Again, reiterating, 4-year projects, it's not static. They move around. They jump around like little Mexican jumping beans. They're just all over, or the stock market, up and down every which way, depending on how if there's federal requirements, hoops to jump through, and are those completed. And there's all sorts of factors that play into facilities. So as I said, too large for annual budgeting. So working with this 6.5 million, we don't want to tie it all up on one project. We want to spread it across to multiple projects, but it's also a balancing act of what the need is. We don't know exactly what the need is. We don't have any facility projects scheduled out in 28 through 30 right now. It's a clean slate. So I just want to mention that too, that we've kind of got through our last batch of program projects. So I think that's it for that slide, Glenn. Please move to the next.
Oh, there we go. Project eligibility.
All right, I get that one too, don't I?
Yep.
I thought so. Thanks. So it can either be an existing facility or a new facility. And we're not saying, I don't think in our scoring we differentiate the two. I think we look at the project, other factors for the scoring. But the existing facilities, again, reiterating 250,000 or more, or less, excuse me, are eligible for
Are you there?
Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry. I was reading it to make sure I was capturing it right, because the way it was worded, I was thinking, oh, this is worded wrong, but it's correct. Projects over 250 are eligible for the facility grant. Yes. Under 250 are for large cap, particularly those renovations, rehabs, those types of things. New facilities, those are with a new site, are eligible for facility grant funding. We are not, historically, we have really strived to differentiate between state-funded and federally funded projects. Typically, the urbans receive the federal-funded projects and the rurals receive the state-funded. But I think we're moving away from that more so because more of the funding that we're using is federal. We're just starting to use less and less state money in the facility category. So some of the things that are not eligible for facilities grant funding are recurring maintenance, leasing, and expenses deemed operational. So really, to get to the detail of what those are, you need to talk to Paul and to Brian about those. They keep a very distinct list of those and can go into those deep dives much cleaner. So please, if you have questions about that, third bullet, talk to Paul and Brian. Facilities repair and remodel projects are not eligible, but are eligible under large cap. We have one, the system's going to apply for a roof replacement under large cap. So, and landscaping around the building. So that's large cap type projects. So And then again, last bullet, just again to reiterate, Brian and Paul to talk about the designs, the scopes, all those pieces you need to have. So if you haven't started the design and scope, you're kind of behind the 8 ball for getting an application in this year, because you really need to have that piece done first. So if you're even thinking about wanting to do one in the future, reach out to Brian and Paul to get the process started. You don't have to apply this year, but get the ball started. It takes multiple years to get these things going. And so just reiterate that way. All right. Next slide. Then I turn it over to you, I believe.
Thank you.
Glenn?
Thank you. So we want to talk about scoring. It's changed some to try to help set everybody up for success who wants a facility project and needs one. The project description, we've always asked you or not always, we've for the last few years asked you if you have a project to bring a conceptual design and budget. We're now suggesting that you include as some of the data points and information in the project description, the work that had been done in advance on that conceptual design to help you decide what design and facility you actually needed and why you needed it, and therefore the cost. We hope that you will use that information as part of your project description. We then have a need which has been there before and is not much change, renovation or new that's similar, improved safety and sustainability. But the descriptions are now slightly changed to help you kind of see what it is you need to cover in each one of those and better understand that. And then the scoring itself describes what a good answer and what a stronger answer and a weaker answer will look like. And so we've gone through and used what is often used these days for a scoring rubric, a 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 description, where we go from a poor, weak answer to a stronger, excellent answer, and try to describe that out. We describe it in more detail in the instructions, and so we encourage you to go back to the instructions. Although we should point out this presentation is now available on the invite you have on your calendar. You should be able to download the presentation there. With that, I think no examples is all yours to talk about.
Thank you. So we're trying to provide more examples, particularly overall solicitations, but this one in particular, to try to get, because these projects vary so much and are so individualized, the stories are, and it's much easier to tell a story about the need for operating funds, but the need for a facility, you can have several different ways you try to package the story. So we gave some examples in the instructions. What I would encourage you not to do is not a copy and paste. So don't think you can copy and paste it. It's not. What it's to do is to give you a guide to help you understand the type of information that you could possibly incorporate into yours. Because you have to tell your own story. These applications that were put together, they tell a story. They tell a good story. And that's the part that I think when you read them, you will see, oh, wow. And in some cases, you'll say, well, yeah, they've got all sorts of data that I can't conceivably think of figuring out, because some of them are larger and have more staff to be able to come up with some data-based answers, real intensive data-based answers. But there are some examples too, which you can take away. The theme is, oh, I need to describe this better. So I'm going to use one example, which I think ties back to last year's applications. I'll just bring it forth. So we had some that were not funded last year, and they didn't score well in need. And the reason they didn't score well in need because they really didn't describe the need very well. And so when you read these examples, the descriptions of what their needs are much more formulated, much more thought out and described on paper to be able to utilize. So that is what we're trying to do. Now we have examples of those, both high scoring and low scoring ones. We actually borrowed that idea from another state solicitation that another state had done. Thought it was a good idea to help providing those so that you could see, oh, this is what a good one is, this is what a bad one is, so you can compare and contrast and get an idea of what level you should be at in terms of trying to provide an answer. So we can't make it fill in the blank, but we can give you samples to work with. So and this also helps our scorers because then they have an idea of what they're looking for in terms of answers to of what is high scoring, low scoring. So it helps both you and the ones who are doing the scoring. So if you need to have talk about your story you're going to tell, run it past your TPM and your specialist because they'll critique it for you and say, that doesn't sound really strong, or it sounds really good. You know, they know what level we're at here, what we're trying to get at. So use them as a sounding board. That's part of what their role is to be a sounding board. So they are not scoring it, they're helping you. That's why we don't have them scoring the applications. So just want to mention that also. I think that's it for me on the example piece, Glenn.
Let me just mention one other thing. When we first did the examples, we went to AI to develop the examples. And when we talked to Laura and Brian and Paul about them, they at first were very concerned. Oh my God, you went to AI, and they're not examples of what our systems have provided in the past or of specific projects that are upcoming. They are not. And indeed, they are not necessarily even good answers to your question or to your applications, for your applications. What they are is examples. And AI, if you've used it or if you haven't, is only it's drawing from a huge pool of information, and it's only as good as the questions you ask and the information you give it to consider, and your answers will change radically depending on what you ask it to do for you and to deliver for you. And so don't think of these examples as something that's even close to cut and paste. They may be good format. They may be good examples of level of detail to provide, but they are not your application. And please don't use it that way.
I think I also want to add another comment, another example. So I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. We had it was an operating, and as part of the operating, we had the cover letter, and then the decisions were made. We didn't use this 5%. It was prior to that. So it was when we individually determined funding levels for systems. And one system was going to be reduced by $350,000. And but because of their cover letter, that was reversed, and they got it back because their cover letter was so good that it described the need and the rationale so well that it reversed a $350,000 reduction. So the power of the written word is important in these solicitations and applications. So that's the example I wanted to provide. So with that,